Good evening. What may I get started for you?
I'm thinking about getting the approval of others. Should I? Oh, definitely. I'll have that.
Excellent choice. It comes with 2,000 Facebook likes. And for you, madam?
Well, I will also have the approval of others, but on a bigger, much nicer plate than hers. Can I get the likes and followers?
Of course. 2 popularity specials, 1 with comparison and 1 without. I'll get that started for you and also bring out a basket of selfie sticks.
Yes, please.
We're going to talk over these next several weeks about choices. And the reason that it's called I Choose is because choices are incredibly personal. There are certain choices that you make that other people around you aren't going to buy into. It's not going to happen. For instance, some of you cheer for the wrong football team. That's an incredibly personal choice, and it's okay for you to be wrong. I don't have a problem with that. But I know I'm right, okay, because it's my choice. Some of you, the style of music that you listen to. For others of you, it's the kind of clothes that you wear or the activities that you choose to participate in. But what happens sometimes is when we don't want to take personal responsibility for our choices, we begin to referring to choices as group choices. Well, we decided to go wherever. No, you decided to go and you drug the rest of your family along there, but it was easier when it didn't go well to say we chose. Well, that's what they were doing. We begin to attach these just kind of vague generalities to things, but choices in and of themselves are always personal. You have the ability to choose. And over these next several weeks, we're going to take a look at what I believe are some of the most important choices that we could possibly make. We're going to be talking about things like what is the difference between choosing surrender or choosing control? What's the difference between choosing the important or choosing the urgent in life? Today I want to talk about something that they kind of humorously referred to there in the video, but I think it's pretty significant. It's this idea of popularity. Now, the world in which we live automatically sets us up for this idea that anything that I do can be automatically broadcast everywhere, okay? And I don't care what your social media platform is, or if you say, well, I'm not on social media, that doesn't affect me. Well, but there's phone calls and there's everything else, and people begin to communicate with one another, and we want people to approve of what we do and who we feel that we are. We talked about it just last week. We had our Christmas morning Facebook Live webcast, and I was amazed. There were over 700 people that checked that thing out. I'm like, man, that is so cool. That's so neat. See, that was validation of what we did. For some of us, we base whether or not somebody liked something on whether or not we get a little like icon. And now they've added extra stuff. Now it's a really big deal. They didn't just hit like they had to scroll over and choose the happy face or choose whatever else. You get the big thumbs up or whatever it might be. All of a sudden it's a big deal that somebody recognized a choice that I made and they have validated that choice with me. Sometimes I just think that we haven't really moved on from junior high. And that's really kind of what it comes down to, right? I mean, everybody knows what it's like in junior high. You go into that first day of school, and you're trying to decide what you're going to wear for the first day of school. And mom or dad wants you to wear one thing, and that's the worst choice possible. You could never wear that. Everybody's going to make fun of you, and nobody's going to like that, and no. And so you choose what you want to wear. Right? Because baggy sweatpants and a hoodie is exactly what is in this season, and that's what you need to wear on the first day of a hot school year. And so you go to that, and then years later, you're looking back at pictures, and you're like, why in the world didn't I listen to my parents? It will happen, I promise you. At some point, that is going to take place. Nicholas is going to go, man, my dad was right. I had no idea. It's going to take place, right? And what happens is we make these incredibly personal choices based on what we think other people are going to think or feel. Well, if I wear this, they will think that. If I choose to do this, they will be okay with that. And so we begin to dig into this idea of personality, and it really doesn't change with time. It just doesn't. I had the absolute joy this morning of getting to hold little Ava while Kelly was rehearsing. Actually, if I'm honest about it, I stole that opportunity from Kyle, because Kyle's the one that offered to do it, but he was back there at soundboard. So I ran up under the guise that I was going to get her and bring her back to him, and I just never gave her up, okay? So that's just kind of how it worked this morning. And so here's this little one, who's still cute and doesn't yet know how to talk back to her parents, which as parents we all know is the sweet spot in life. And so here I am holding her and enjoying her, and then here comes Addie with her mom and dad, because they don't count anymore, it's just Addie coming in, And I'm looking at her, and they both have these just absolutely adorable little headbands on, and they look so cute, and they look so amazing, and it's so neat. And I'm going, you know what? It doesn't change as we get older. We want our kids to look a certain way. We want our families to be perceived certain ways. We want people at work to think certain things about us. And so this junior high idea continues on and on and on throughout our life. We want people to like us. This idea of popularity. But I think there is something that stands in absolute stark contrast to popularity. I believe it is a choice that we absolutely have to make. We have to choose popularity or purpose. And here's what I mean by that. Once we have purpose that we have settled on in our life, then each and every moment of our day, each and every continuing decision that we make, each step that we choose to take in our life, plays either to that purpose or to popularity. And I want us this morning to look in the book of Hebrews. The writer of Hebrews is spending this entire chapter looking at some great patriarchs of the faith, looking at everybody from Noah and Abraham and moving on into others. And when he gets to this point of the passage in verse 24, he's been talking about Moses. Okay? First, in verse 23, he talks about Moses' parents who made the decision to put him in the basket and float him out and do all those things that many of you know from the story. But in verse 24, we find these verses. It says, "By faith Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter." Go ahead. Here we go. "And chose to suffer with the people of God rather than to enjoy the short-lived pleasure of sin. For he considered the reproach because of the Messiah to be greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, since his attention was on the reward." Now, there are a couple words that incredibly stand out to me about these verses. The first one, in verse 25, it says he chose. You notice this isn't something that he just fell into. It wasn't something that just happened. Moses made a significant choice. Moses, this Hebrew child who had been floated out in the river that Pharaoh's daughter had rescued, this one who was Hebrew by birth, who was Hebrew by every estimation, was raised as something different than that. He was raised as a prince of Egypt. And yet, as he grew and began to understand who he was, what God had made him to be, he chose not to identify as what was easy, not to identify as what was popular, not to identify as what could be affluent and helpful to him. He chose to identify as who God had created him to be, knowing what it would bring, knowing what would take place in his life. Now, most of us, I'm just telling you, if we were in the exact same situation as Moses, we would not have made that choice. I'm just telling you, I was driving in this morning, I passed a house that was just really nice looking, and I go, man, I would love to live in a house like that. That would be so cool, that would be so neat, there's space, I could do this, I could do that, and all. I mean, he had so much more than that. I mean, he had literally the riches of the Egyptian kingdom at his fingertips, and yet he chose something different. And the writer here tells us why he chose what he chose. He says he didn't choose it because it was profitable. He didn't choose it for any of those reasons. He chose it for the sake of Christ because it was of greater value than the treasures of Egypt. It was of greater value than the treasures of Egypt. Here's what I believe. I believe that if we're going to choose purpose over popularity, part of the reason we have to do it is because living for the approval of people keeps us from the purpose of God. Now, hear me when I say that. Living for the approval of people keeps us from the purpose of God. And I don't care if that approval is to come from many or that approval is to come from a few. Because we know the one that we recognize today in our culture is that approval that comes from lots. You know, how many likes do you have on a certain post? How many people agree with you? How many people don't agree with you? That kind of thing. But for some of us, that popularity, we don't desire that popularity from many. There's a popularity from one that we want. There's someone significant in our life, and as long as we keep them happy, then everything will be okay. Maybe it's a parent. Well, man, if I could just make them happy, then everything could be okay. Maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a sibling, but we look for that approval, that popularity from them, that thing that says it's okay. And many times we chase that so hard and so far that we find ourselves far away from the purpose that God has designed for our life. I know that for me, there have been times in my life when I have failed to listen to God because I was hearing so clearly from others. Now, it doesn't mean that I was choosing bad things. It doesn't mean that I was doing something that by most people's estimations that I shouldn't have done. It's just that because I was so listening to other people, I was hearing their positive praise and their encouragement and all those kinds of things. I'm like, well, if enough people like it, if enough people say this is good and this is right, then it must be right. But there are times in my life when those good things were not the great things that God had intended for me. In every choice that takes place is this choice over purpose or popularity, because when I seek people's approval, many times, in fact, most times, it keeps me from the purpose of God. The second thing when it comes to choosing purpose over popularity is that purpose diminishes distractions. Purpose diminishes distractions. And here's what I mean by that. When you have a very clearly defined goal set out in front of you, when you have a very clearly defined purpose to what it is that you are attempting to accomplish, other things begin to fade away. I have a friend of mine that he can sit down with a guitar and play for hours. And I don't care what's going on in his life. I don't care what's happening. I don't care what's on TV. I don't care what his friends are doing. He has such a drive to be good at that nothing else becomes a distraction. Many of you know Brandon Reyes, who's been a part of our church. He's at Western Illinois University right now, and he's working as a grad assistant there. We would always joke on Sundays, whenever it was time for us to get together to rehearse as a band, we would say, well, Brochi's probably already been in the practice room for 2 hours before we had to get together at 7 or 8 or whatever time it was on Sunday morning. And the crazy thing is, we were right. He was so driven to be so good at his craft. He was so driven to accomplish certain things within the abilities that God had given him that it was more important to him than getting extra sleep, or it was more important to him than staying out late the night before. So he got in and got the sleep so he'd get up and get his rehearsal done. He knew if he had certain things going on during the day, he had to reorder and reprioritize the rest of his day so that he could accomplish this purpose, the distractions weren't there. You've seen it at work. There's that person that's so driven to succeed at work that they bring their lunch with them, not just because it's cheaper, or not just for those other reasons, but because they know that if they go out and grab something at lunch, it will be easy to get distracted and stay out longer than they should, or to get off track and not get back in and get focused on what's going on. And they bring that lunch and they eat there at their desk, not because they're required to, but because it removes the distractions. It keeps them focused on their purpose. You've seen that student that is on the bus heading to the extracurricular activity, and while they're on their way, instead of having conversations with everybody else, they've got their book out and they're doing homework and they're studying, and it would be a whole lot more fun to be shooting the breeze with everybody else, but instead they're so focused on their purpose as a student that it removes the distractions. And for most of us in life, we long for distractions. If you don't think that's true, look at everything around us. It is designed to grab our attention. We often make the joke in our family, we say squirrel, okay? Some of you are familiar with that movie, know where that comes from, okay? But there are times when we're doing something, all of a sudden, squirrel, whoa, what's going on over there? Shiny, something's catching my attention. And I'm supposed to do this, but man, this would be great to do. I'm supposed to be doing that, but this looks so interesting. And it is so easy to get distracted, but choosing purpose over popularity begins to remove those distractions. The second thing that we find out when it comes to choosing purpose over popularity is that purpose pushes you through pain. Purpose pushes you through pain. I am amazed when I see women who are getting ready to have children, because I keep thinking, don't they realize what's going to happen? Don't they realize how much pain they're going to be in? Don't they realize how horrible this is? Because I'm just telling you right now, if I was the one that had to have the kids, there's a reason God did not have guys be the ones that had to have kids. Because if it was on me, I would curl up in the fetal position and cry for months, okay, until it happened. The idea of undergoing that in no way, shape, or form is comprehensible to me, okay? But I have seen women go in, getting ready to have a child, understanding the pain that is going to happen, understanding the discomfort and all of the recovery and all those things that go into it, and they go into it with a smile on their face. Now, these are weird, twisted people, but I have seen it happen. Why in the world could they walk into something that is going to bring such physical pain with a smile? Because they understand the purpose. The pain is momentary. The pain is just a part of this process. But the purpose of carrying this child is to see new life come about, to see someone new added to the family, to see the love of the family grow exponentially. And so they are able to endure the pain. See, people, when they decide to get healthier or go work out or do things like that, obviously on a much smaller scale. And what happens with some people is they are more worried about the popularity of the choice than the purpose of the choice. Many of you know I've been working out and doing some of that kind of stuff, and so the last week has been really interesting to watch. I mean, really interesting. My gym got a whole lot more crowded this last week. I don't know why that would happen. I don't know anything about the calendar that would bring that about or anything. But my particular gym, where normally I could go in and grab whatever machine I wanted or do whatever I needed to do pretty much any time of day, all of a sudden there were times when it's like, who are all you people and what are you doing here? This is my gym. Get out of my space. And I tried not to be a snob about it. I'm like, oh, they want to get healthy and they want to do things and all that kind of stuff. It's so awesome to see them. Okay, and so on Sunday, January 1st, I'm there. I'm doing my work. I'm getting my stuff done, and it is a packed out place. I go on Monday. Most people are off work, right? Because that's when all the businesses celebrated the New Year's. And so it's a packed out place again. On Tuesday, it was a little easier to find a machine. By Friday, open rows of machines. Like literally, in the span of 1 week, people who had made this decision, why did they make the decision? Well, because it's a popular decision to make at the beginning of the year. Well, yeah, I want to get healthier. I mean, that's a good New Year's resolution. That's a good choice. I ought to do that. But there are other people that are brand new, and they do it differently. Their purpose is different. Their purpose wasn't just to make a choice. Their purpose was to do something different with their health, with their body. And so they begin going through it. And the reason you know that those people are different is because the first week hurts. I mean, the first week, you're working muscles in places you didn't know you had places. You know, you do one machine thinking it's working one set of muscles, and really it's working these other muscles, and it's like, oh my goodness. Thursday night, I had to work a basketball game, and I'd done legs the day before. And Kyle always gives me a hard time. He says I'm a wuss when it comes to legs, and that's because I'm a wuss when it comes to legs. He's a very accurate guy. And so I'd worked out, and my quads were hurting so bad. I'm at a small gym. Like, you could walk up and down the court, and I feel like I'm 80 just trying to get up. Like, it is hurting so bad. And so then on Friday, I had a game where I was going to have some real athletes, and I was going to have to move up and down the court, and it's a bigger court and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I said, you know what I should probably do? I should probably just skip the gym today. So that way I am in good shape. I'm not more sore when I get there tonight. And I said that in the morning and came in, got things done, this stuff. I'm like, as I kept getting closer, I'm like, I can't do that because my purpose is this. It doesn't matter if it hurts a little bit tonight. So I went ahead and I went to the gym and I'm doing the leg sled, and I'm sitting there going, it is not good for people to see me cry in public, but it's happening. You know, and I did it. Why? Not because it was enjoyable. There is nothing enjoyable for me about going to the gym. Some of you enjoy it. Again, you're sick, twisted people. I get that. I do it because of the purpose that is there. Purpose allows us to move through pain. Guess what, parents? As a parent, there are times that parenting your child well will bring pain. Spouses, there are times when being the kind of spouse that you are called to be to your husband or wife is going to bring pain. Friends, there are times when being the kind of friend that those around you need is going to bring pain. And if we are not focused on that purpose that God has called us to, it will be so easy to allow that pain to take us right back to popularity. Oh, that's uncomfortable. I don't want to do that. Let's do what's easy. No. We have the opportunity to choose purpose over popularity because purpose allows us to move through the pain in ways that many times we just can't begin to understand under our own power and ability. Here's the most important one. Purpose empowers us to please God. Go back to those verses there in Hebrews. By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God, rather to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt because his attention was on the reward. I think for many of us, we get so caught up in the moment that we fail to acknowledge this idea of pleasing God with everything that we have, with everything that we are. In Acts, there is this group of disciples who have been called out, and they are on trial, and people are trying to get them to stop doing what they have been doing. And they respond simply, we must obey God rather than human beings. For them, that carried an incredible threat. It carried the threat of imprisonment. It carried the threat of punishment. It carried the threat of pain. It carried all of those things, but yet they said, we must obey God rather than humans. The reward was so great that there is no way they were willing to sacrifice that for the momentary pleasure. Can I tell you that I believe God has given us the opportunity in the world in which we live, at the time in which we're living, to see unbelievable things happen for the cause of Christ. Within the scope and life of our church, even over just the last few months, we have seen lives changed. We've seen relationships restored. We've seen hope brought back to desperate situations. And can I tell you, I believe that that is a message that our world desperately needs to hear. They need to know that there is that kind of hope present. But if they see us focused on the exact same things that they're focused on, then why in the world would they believe that there is any hope? Because they don't see it as anything different. Moses chose what he chose because of the reward that comes from following God's purpose for our life, which is not in the moment, but it is long lasting. As we look at these choices over these next few weeks, I think we are going to find that as we step from choice to choice to choice, we begin to see some building blocks for how we can live out this idea of purpose over popularity. And of course, what is our ultimate purpose? Our purpose is to honor, obey, and please God. How do we do that? Well, first of all, we do it by beginning relationship with Him. By entering into a personal relationship with Him where we have acknowledged our own sinfulness and accepted the incredible gift of life that comes through the sacrifice that Jesus Christ made for us. But secondly, it comes from living our lives sacrificially, the same way that He lived His life sacrificially for us. With sacrifice comes pain. And it is my desperate hope that we will be so focused on the purpose that when those painful moments come, when those uncomfortable moments come following Jesus Christ, that we would be able to push through those in the exact same way that a loving mother who's getting ready to bring this child into the world, that she doesn't see the pain of the moment, she sees the joy of the lifetime. I pray that we would see that as a church. It is my prayer that we would be so focused on the purpose that God has called us to live out, that the distractions would fade away. We had a meeting on Thursday morning with some of our leadership, and we were beginning to do the single hardest thing that any church has to do: calendar. I know that sounds weird to you. Well, the hardest thing is telling people about Jesus. The hardest thing is getting people to give money. The hardest thing is putting something on a calendar, you know? I mean, how many different schedules do we have within the people that we've got? And how many different things are going on in our community? And how many different, and all. And in the midst of that, one of the things that I kept thinking to myself is, you know what? There are some things that are so important that we have to remove the distractions of other stuff. I have lots of things going on in my life. A lot of you know I'm at a different place almost every day of the week. I got stuff going on, but there are some things that are so important. I have to remove those distractions and make sure that I'm able to focus on this for that moment at that time. For some of you, you have so many different irons in the fire that it is so easy to be distracted, but we need to find those things that tie into the purpose that God has called us to and be able to focus on those and remove the distractions that would take us away from them. As we choose purpose over popularity, what we really have to do is decide, who do we want to be popular with? There's a phrase that gets thrown around that is accurate yet inaccurate. It says, if mama's not happy, nobody's happy. You've heard that one before. You know what that's like. What does that mean? Well, that means that if mom, who is helping make all of those vital things happen in your home, if she's not happy, well, then it affects everyone else. And I think it's unfair that moms get singled out there, because the truth is, if dad's not happy, nobody's happy. If son isn't happy, nobody's happy. If daughter isn't happy, nobody's happy. Why? Because they all affect the way that the family lives and works, moves together. But there is one person whose approval we should absolutely be seeking with each and every decision that we make, regardless if it makes mom happy, dad happy, son happy, daughter happy, friend happy, spouse happy, anyone else happy. And that one person is God. And if it requires me making a decision that goes against God's purpose for my life in order to make someone else happy, then let me tell you, that choice is not worth it. Moses gave up the riches of this world. Moses gave up all of the accolades that could have been heaped on him. He gave up all of the opportunities that could have been at his feet. He gave up all the monetary gain. He gave up all the relationship gain. He gave up all of that. Why? To focus on God's purpose for his life. And because of it, he faced battle. Because of it, he faced death. Because of it, he walked through a sea, not knowing what was going to happen on either side of him. Because of it and other people's unfaithfulness, he wandered in the desert for years. Not because it was easy, not because it was popular, but because it fulfilled the purpose of God in his life. And it is my prayer that we would live lives that would fulfill the purpose of God in our lives, both individually, because I choose, not you. You don't choose for me, I choose. But then corporately, as we live out the life that God has called us to live as a community of faith. God, thank you for reminding us once again that you care about our choices, that God, we are responsible for our choices, that we are held accountable for our choices. God, it is so easy to choose what is popular. It is so easy to choose what doesn't rub people the wrong way. But God, I pray that we would make our choices for one reason and one reason only. Does this fit the purpose that you have called me to live in life? God, forgive us when we fail you. And God, empower us to live the life that you would have us live. I pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. One quick story, a couple quick announcements, then I'll get you out the door. I want you to know that when I talk about things like this, these are not things that I am always successful in. Many times when you hear somebody get up and give a sermon or message or whatever term you want to attach to kind of what happened here, many times it's because we ourselves, those who would be delivering that message, are struggling with those same issues. A little over a week ago, I was at a college basketball game where I was there, and I'm working up and beginning to do some things and all. And so there is a moment after the game where all of the officials are in the locker room together. And at the collegiate level, especially in women's college basketball, there's both men and women officials that are working the game together. So after the game, before you split up to kind of separate dressing areas and that kind of thing, you get together and you talk. And there was a man there who was evaluating what was going on. He assigns games to different people. And there was one female official in the room, and there were 5 guys in the room. And this guy who was evaluating, this guy who is in a position of power, okay, because he has the ability to give out assignments and give opportunities and stuff like that, or take them away. He just starts speaking in an unbelievably crude way, in a way that was absolutely and totally demeaning to women. And I sat there and I had never been so uncomfortable in a setting like that. And I'm looking at my friend who I had gone with, that I'm beginning to walk into this world with, and I'm looking at him and he's looking at me, and it's like, oh my goodness. And I kept waiting for somebody to say something and nobody did. And this poor woman is standing there, and she's incredibly successful. I mean, she's a confident person and all. And because of the power that this person held, she and everybody else in the room, myself included, just shrank away from the opportunity to stand for what was right. Why? Because we were more concerned about popularity than purpose. Well, if I offend him, I won't get opportunities. If I say something, people are going to label me one way or another way or whatever. And you just need to know I absolutely failed in that moment. In fact, I went home, I got her email address, I sent her an email just apologizing, saying I should have stood for what was right and I didn't. And that's on me, that's not on anybody else in the room, that's on me. Can I tell you, that was a situation that brought this to mind for me, but we face those kinds of situations each and every day. And it's my desire that we would be better than I was that day. That I would be better than I was that day as we attempt to live out the life that God has called us to live. One of the ways that we get better, one of the ways that we find the strength and encouragement to get better is by participating in small group ministry here at Journey. And tonight we're kicking off our groups for 2017. Had a little break over the holidays. Our Wednesday night group has already been going, and they're getting ready to kick off. Like, they're going to be multiplying soon. Some awesome things are happening with that group. Our Sunday night groups meet tonight. That means our Journey Kids meet. Our Journey Live, which is our student ministry, 6th grade through 12th grade, they'll be meeting tonight. And our adult groups are meeting tonight. If you have never participated in small group ministry here at Journey, can I just tell you, tonight would be the perfect time to come check us out. It would be a great time. And here's what I would love for you to do. If you'd like to be a part of that, either find one of those care cards laying around, say, I want to come tonight. Write it on there and hand it to the folks at the Welcome Center on the way out. Or find Kyle Ponton, who's in the back, or Beverly Schmidt, who's back here on this row. Find one of them and say, hey, I want to come tonight. So they can get you information on how that works, what takes place with kids and meals and all that kind of stuff, because we eat together tonight. You just be our guest. We provide stuff for you. And we would love the opportunity, because as we find that accountability with one another, then in those moments when things get hard, in those moments when things get painful, we have somebody to call and be encouraged by, someone sometimes to kick us when we haven't done what we need to be doing. It's an incredible opportunity for us to begin to live out the life that God has called us to live. And I hope you'll choose to be a part of that tonight. If you're not already involved in a group, tonight's a perfect time to jump into what we're doing. Next week's going to be great. We're going to continue this series. And also next Sunday night, don't forget, will be third Sunday worship. So next Sunday night, we'll be gathering together for special worship time in the evening. Going to be a ton of fun. And can't wait to see you here for that as well. Thanks so much. See you back next week.